Lifting Leaders podcast, where we're unleashing leader possibilities to make a better world. I'm Trisha Ryan, and together with Crystal Roberts, we're diving deeper into some of the complexities of the world's most critical challenges and exploring innovative ways of navigating through them.
Through interviews with experts and leaders just like you, we are exploring what it takes to thrive as a leader today and examining new ways of thinking about how to creatively lead into a more equitable, socially responsible, and sustainable future. And the future starts now. Hi, Trisha. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Crystal, how about yourself?
I am awesome. I'm very excited about today's episode.
Me too.
Yeah, it's a really important one.
Yes.
So I hope that our listeners can kind of slow down and lean into this conversation because it really speaks directly to the heart of what Lifting Leaders podcast really is all about, unleashing leader possibilities to make a better world.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that it'll be a good one for people to listen to while they're in traffic because it's summer and for some reason traffic is heavier right now.
It is, for sure. Yes. And our listeners know how passionate we are about hope as the starting point, the catalyst really for meaningful change. But hope alone isn't enough.
No.
What bridges that gap between hope and action is courage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And courage to step into the unknown, to speak up, to lead through resistance, and to make choices that align with our deepest values, even when it's really hard.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. And today's guest has spent years exploring this exact theme through her podcast, The Courage Effect. She's uncovered profound insights about what courage really looks like in leadership and what holds us back from living and leading more boldly. She's a Hudson leadership coach, speaker. We have a lot of Hudson listeners, so shout out to them. Change practitioner, communication strategist, and as we just said, the host of The Courage Effect. Through her firm, Weller Collaboration, and over 2 decades of experience as a leader and entrepreneur, she helps executives and teams rewrite limiting narratives, challenge outdated scripts, and spark authentic change. We're excited to learn from her today, both the wisdom that she's gathered and the stories that have inspired her, and discover how courage can become a catalyst for a more just, compassionate, and thriving world. So welcome, Suzanne Weller.
Welcome.
Such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Crystal and Trisha.
Yeah, we love that you're here. I would also add that Suzanne is a dear friend of ours. I went through Hudson with her, and Trisha has gotten to know her through some other activities that we've done together. And also I would share, she has just the cutest little dog, Bacon.
I know. And Bacon has his own account used to on social media. And I thought,
I love
cute.
Bacon. He's so cool. And then is a wicked baker. So some people may know that, may not know that, but I love that. I love that Suzanne actually has a lot of thriving interests, which makes, a good life. That's what I think. Yeah.
Yes, if you are listening and you frequent LinkedIn, if you go back in Suzanne's account, you'll find a recent post on baking about what you do when you're just you can't take another moment and you get in there and get creative. And it's amazing, what you can do when you're either angry, frustrated, and, having anxiety or whatever is going on, just getting in and doing something like that, a creative, avenue for you to really express yourself. And I just think we don't want you to be that way all the time, but maybe you like baking and we like eating.
Yeah.
Well, most of the time, baking is a joyous experience. I mean, it's I love creating for other people. It's just a treat, right? I mean, you just make people light up when you bake something for them. And rage baking was something that I started during the pandemic, and it was just a matter of I needed something physical and visceral to get the emotions out. And I was like, well, this is nice because then I get to produce something wonderful on the other side of it. So it's transforming rage into something that is not only tasty but beautiful.
I love that. Yeah, that's so cool. I'm actually learning how to make sourdough bread, apparently. So all my kids are doing it. So I'm like, I got to do this too. So maybe I'll get that same experience. Not rage. I'm not feeling a lot of rage right now.
Maybe you should.
Get those emotions out, whatever they are. Yeah, maybe I should. Yeah, there's a lot to be rageful of. That's for sure. All right, so let's just kick it off with our question that we love to ask, which is, tell us your story.
My story. I am, as what my husband Tom says, American-made British parts. So I was born in California to parents who were English. And my parents got married and came to America on the Queen Mary in the 60s. Wow. So they were trailblazers in and of themselves well, America will be a place that we can go for a few years and see what happened. And that was, by the way, 60 years ago. They're still here.
Yeah.
Very, very grateful to be able to say that. But I think that was part of the adventurous spirit that they instilled in me from a pretty young age was it's my sister and I, my older sister, Julie. And I would say that they never gave me the impression that I couldn't do something. It was, they always looked to us to say, like, get out there, like strike your path, figure out what you really want to do, and don't feel limited by location. Don't feel limited by, what might be the sort of standard limitations that are out there.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that I was always like this incredibly courageous child, but I think they were just always, they planted that seed in me at a young age. And there was a point of, I think, really important to recognize what was not working for me or what I wanted to do more of. And that to me is a lot of what courage is about. It's not just about stepping into what you would like to do, but letting go of the stuff that you're done with or that maybe you feel is getting in your way. So that was something that I took through. I went to graduate school. I was going to be an English professor. And I got to graduate school and I was like, no, this is great for some people, but it's not really great for me. So finished that up. I moved to Seattle, was in Seattle for 7 years. Then I moved to New York for 12 years. And a lot of my path was about pushing myself into new places, trying out new geographies. And I know that I got that initially from my parents.
Yeah.
So that love of why not? And figuring that out. One of my courageous stories is I moved to New York having never met my roommate or seen the apartment that I was living in, which could have been completely insane. But if you do it in a way where you're sort of hedging your bets and looking at, you're doing managed risk as it would be, why not? I would rather live with maybe some of the aftermath of those decisions than regret it. And that's been a core theme throughout my life, throughout my work. And I've been really fortunate to have people in my life that support that. Yeah. And I've made intentional decisions to have people in my life to cultivate the relationships that help me to grow that, because you both know, it's so much about not just what you do, but the company you keep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough to be raised with that, to have that sort of adventurous, courageous spirit, such a gift. But it's also something that, how do I help to cultivate that in other people? And how do I continue to surround myself with people that push me and challenge me and don't support me, but also let me know that, maybe there's something else. Maybe there's a way that I can push myself, and I can also be able to do that for other people, in support of other people in the greater world.
Yeah, I love that.
Wow.
That.
Your parents gave you that gift, but there are so many people that get gifts like that from their parents and they never take it beyond that. And you really have. You took what you learned and you made the most of it, which is wonderful. It's like, I see you that way very much as a courageous, adventurous person, and may not always feel that way, but you certainly don't show it, right? So,
thank you.
Why did you choose to start a podcast, The Courage Effect?
I would like to see a more courageous world where we're not stunted by fear. Mm-hmm. And I feel that our world's, I feel like it metastasizes fear in so many ways. And we all have them. And I don't think it's necessarily something to be ashamed of. It's just about, what is it telling us?
Yeah.
And so with The Courage Effect, I wanted to do an audio journey. I wanted to create some content there, and I was being encouraged by people in my world to do it. And at first it was, I thought about what are you afraid of? Like, I was going over all these various titles and what I wanted it to be. And for me, it was very much about, I realized that in my life, a lot of people said to me, like, when I did things, that was really courageous of you to do that. And I never really thought of myself as a courageous person, but when people kept sort of reminding me of it, and then becoming a coach and going through, Hudson, which I call my excavation, and really, I think, unearthing who I was and what was important, it was not just about wrangling fear, but it was about tapping into courage. So the positive, not just what I wanted to move beyond. Yeah. So it was wanting to bring that show up, and the courage effect. It's how it multiplies, right? It's not just about the act that you do, the one courageous act, which can be in so many different forms and sizes and shapes, but that has a larger ripple effect. That is a way that you can start to build the capacity to do more for yourself and other people too, right? I mean, I call it courageous contagion, because I do believe that when you see other people doing it, you're like, well, why can't I do that? Or maybe I can do something similar to that. So it's the idea of getting away from the shame of like, well, maybe I did it and it was a nightmare, but I can talk about it. Like, failure is an opportunity for us to learn.
Yeah.
Or maybe there were things beyond our control that we didn't take into consideration. But for me, it was about, how do I truly inspire people to have hard conversations, including myself, and to put it out there, and to encourage people to, encourage. I mean, that whole idea of how do I create a community, and how do I create a space for people to truly have these conversations? Because that, to me, is where transformation happens, when you just take one step out of that comfort zone, or when you push the boundary a little bit, see what happens with it. It doesn't mean you have to stay outside of it, but at least it's a matter of, okay, I took away something from this. It's changed me in some way.
Yeah.
So to me, it's the path to transformation in whatever way that makes sense for you.
Yeah, it's like exposure, right? Sometimes exposure opens your mind to new and different things, and until you're ready to do it, you're not going to do it. But you're encouraging that. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's so interesting. A couple things that were coming to my mind is when you're talking about that hedging your bets, when you were talking about your story. And one of the things that when I was listening to your story, I think part of it also comes down to confidence. And that, it may not work out. It may be a big failure, but I have confidence in myself that I can actually rebound from that, and I can survive it, and I will be okay, no matter what the outcome is. And that's a really key piece, I think, to that. When you think about courage, is that you're not going to, as Trisha would say, melt.
That's right.
You're not going to melt, it may be uncomfortable, but in the end, you're going to be all right. You're going to survive. So you carrying that confidence with you, and I always see you personally as a very confident person anyway, that, I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to have some courage. And if it doesn't work out, I'll be all right. It's okay.
Thank you. It's not always easy. I mean, we know that, right? We all have our challenges. And for me, regret is worse.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean no regret. It just means, how do I manage regret in my life? Because there's certain things that it's like, well, it didn't happen for whatever reason, or maybe I regret how I showed up, or I regret maybe doing something. Yeah. How do I make amends? How do I, what do I do with it? I mean, it's, at the end of the day, it's all data, right? It's like, this is all information, and I can create meaning for what makes sense for me, but also for other people. And I'd rather say that I did something than I didn't do it. Yeah. It's just that really matters to me.
Yeah.
It's a choice of whether you want to exercise this mental muscle or this one. You can become a victim of something, or you can actually stop doing something because it didn't land the way you wanted it to. Or you can choose to be more resilient and move in this direction. And clearly, that's the mental muscle that you've been exercising. It seems like it's very strong to me. But, there are a lot of people that that's a hard thing to get to because it's uncomfortable. It's testing themselves, and they have to see themselves sometimes in the mirror in a way that they didn't ever want to. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, and that interesting piece of, once you're there to look back, like, it was so scary going into it, and you were able to have the courage, and we'll talk a little bit about how to get that courage. But then once you've done it, looking back, you're like, oh, it really wasn't that bad. It's like, it pushes what's possible.
Yes.
Right? Now there's something new that's possible because you took that step.
Yes.
So, what have you learned about the nature of courage through those many conversations, very interesting conversations? I've listened to many of them that you've had on the courage effect. And I agree with you also when you were talking about the contagion. I think when you listen to those stories, you can't help but be inspired.
Very much so.
Yeah. So, what have you learned through your podcast?
Well, thank you for listening to it. I love knowing that it touches people in various ways. And the thing that I think is most intriguing about my show is that we talk about things that people don't necessarily align with courage. And for me, the people that I invite to the show, I'm very specific, and I know that they have stepped into courage in some way, that they've done something. It gives a different viewpoint of what courage potentially looks like. And we'll talk a little bit more, I think, about what that is. But what I've learned is that a lot of people don't consider themselves courageous.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's interesting to me because, they're like, well, I'm not like a firefighter. I'm not doing these incredibly bold things and, putting my life on the line. Like what I would say is more heroic, and yes, a lot of these people are definitely heroic, but it's interesting. I think that people are almost hesitant to claim when, well, what was that courage or was that not? And it's funny because like I invited somebody that was a colleague of mine at one point, and she was always so bold and never afraid to say what she wanted to say and speak truth to power. And like, she was inevitably herself. And that to me was so needed. It was a great organization and a supportive organization, but you need people to just be who they are.
Yeah.
Well, not like, not being, can I curse on this show? Can I say asshole?
Sure.
Sure.
Done now.
Not being an a-hole. Sorry, maybe edit that.
That was courageous.
Well, but it's a matter of, and you don't just want to label somebody as being these things, right? It's about, I don't feel like people show up to work being like, I'm going to be a jerk. I'm going to be an a-hole today because, like this is going to get me what I want. Maybe there are some people that do that, but a lot of the time it's about, we have patterns of things that we learn over time. And if we get the results that we want, we perpetuate it. And these are acts and behaviors that are perpetuated by families and by organizations and by communities, et cetera, et cetera. So when you have people that come to organizations that are speaking truth to power in a way where it's not just being controversial or contrarian or, it's coming from a place where they really want to challenge the status quo in a way that is, I think, productive and needed, that is very courageous.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I invited her to be on the show. She was like, it's just weird you invited me because I don't really feel that I'm very courageous. And she's also one of the most creative people that I know. She's an artist. She's, she does all of these really great things. And it takes so much to put yourself out there in these different spaces. And I've also learned that for some people, it comes more naturally, just as far as this is just sort of who I am. And they own it a little bit more quickly than others. But a lot of people don't see themselves as courageous. Some people, they just do it. And sometimes they're like, well, I don't really think about it. I just do it.
Yeah.
And I've learned a lot that one of the things that really holds us back from being courageous is overthinking.
That's true. That is true. Oh my gosh. Talk yourself out of anything, can't you?
Yeah. And there's so many reasons to not do something, right? It's just like, okay, all the wheels are going to start turning around. Well, this. And that's when you're, not only just your skepticism, but maybe like your cynicism creeps in and like the negativity bias and all of these things. So it's really easy to talk ourselves out of something.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And to be aware of it, right? That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
So when we're aware of it, then we can actually make a different choice. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's part of when we talk a little bit more about like the hows, that's a part of it is really getting a better understanding. And it's some of the things that are so moving to me about the show is that, sometimes it's just the courage to look at something in a different way.
Yeah.
And to challenge your thinking and to, I did a show with Shezek Sonoda who talked about, I saw her TEDx talk and she was talking about, the courage, like not looking away. And her son drowned in a pool. And she was saying like, I was looking away for a short period of time. And you can't always be looking at everything, right? It's just a matter of there's certain times where we only have so much awareness of what's going on around us. But we almost have an intentional an intention to look away because it's too hard. Like she talks about, like when you see, people that are unhoused on the street, or when you see things that you're like, that's just too hard, I don't want to deal with it. We need to have the courage to not look away. And when there's hard conversations and hard things happening around us, how can we do that, and how can we encourage others to do it? Because we can also wait, right? It's like the whole idea of, well, somebody'll fix that.
Yeah.
It's like, and it doesn't mean that you're responsible for fixing everything, but what matters to you? What are the things that you really and truly want to make change around? And what was so beautiful about her was, going through the healing process, but also being there for her other children.
Yeah.
And the other things that are in our lives that we need to really take inventory around and know, how do we have the courage to sometimes just show up, to sometimes just get out of bed?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And those are courageous acts too. Yeah.
Not just for ourselves, but for others.
Yeah.
You have heard, I'm sure, many, many moments of courage from the people who have been on your podcast. And I'm just wondering, can you share one, maybe two of those moments when you were deeply moved by something that you heard someone say, and where it really kind of revealed a powerful leadership possibility?
Yes. The one I just spoke of, Shazek, is one, I believe, that was, I invited her after seeing her TEDx talk. I was very fortunate enough to see that in person. So as soon as I saw it, I'm like, okay, I need to find this woman and reach out to her. There's so many. The thing that really sticks with me on some of the shows, there's a few that are coming up because the new season is about to start. So some of them aren't out in the wild yet. I don't necessarily want to talk too much about those. For me, it's about, I invited them to come on to talk about an experience. Like Ileana Quinones talked about finding out that she had a brain tumor, and then going through the process of, okay, I have to quit my job. I have to, not just deal with this, but change my life in so many various ways, and not knowing what life is going to be like on the other side of that, not knowing what you have the capacity to do or otherwise, and being there to assess what is the best for my health. How can I have the agency to make the decisions that are best for me and for my family and, the larger people in her world. But it's what is similar to what we said. What is the possibility that's on the other side of it? Just because we have some crappy hand that's been dealt to us or some horrible thing that we're dealing with doesn't necessarily mean that we can't turn it into some sort of light on the other side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's the other thing, is that a lot of the time it's not just when we choose to step into courage, it's when something is thrown at us and we just have to figure out how to deal with it.
You feel like your choices are gone. At that point, it's like, I must do something. And you can either not look at where you are right now and see a possibility. I can't imagine somebody ever wanting to be in that place, but I also can't imagine somebody not addressing it when they're absolutely smacked with it. That's very brave.
It's an interesting distinction too, to think about that. Like, when do we have courage, take action that is internally decided? I mean, I guess they all are, but I'm going to do something, or when something is given to me that I need to react to, just something happens to me, like the brain tumor. And when do we, just because of our values, decide I'm going to do something to make a difference? And both take courage, but maybe it looks different. And that would be a whole nother podcast to explore and dive deep into. But it's an interesting thought.
I wonder if you have had any conversations with some of your listeners, or you've heard from some of your listeners on these courageous moments that are happening during, or at least you're hearing about during your podcast. So I'm wondering if any of them have shared any that have really stood out for them.
Yes, it's some of the ones I think that also looking at analytics and otherwise, but analytics are great, but it's always wonderful to talk to people about what stuck with them.
Yeah.
I think the one that I hear probably the most about is perfectionism, the perfection trap with Dr. Thomas Curran. And that, for me, I think people think, well, why is perfectionism, what does courage have to do with it? It's knowing that you're a perfectionist. I mean, I heard him on NPR. I read his book. I invited him to be on the show because his book had such impact on me. I am a recovering perfectionist, and I needed to have the courage to acknowledge that and to change it. Mm-hmm. And similar to what we talked about with overthinking being a barrier, perfectionism is a massive barrier too. And we have a society that it's growing, it's building it. Like, we foster perfectionism.
Yeah.
We welcome it because we think that it's something that we actually get benefit from, whereas actually it's degrading in so many ways because it's based on unrealistic ideas and lack and what we ultimately can't be. So that's been one where a lot of people have approached me and said, I'm a perfectionist. I didn't realize, I think, or how, because he talks about 3 different ways that it manifests on the show. And they realize, oh God, I'm doing it to other people. Like, I'm actually putting unrealistic expectations on other people. And that for them was like, I need to change this behavior because not only is it detrimental to me, but it's detrimental to other people in my world. So that's one where it's more about the limiting beliefs, I think, or the thought patterns that we have that where we need to have the courage to say, this isn't really working, or this isn't serving me, or maybe those around me. And having that humility to do something about it. That's one that I've had a lot of people talk to me about. I've also had a lot of conversations. Elsa Garrison, who is a sports photographer. I worked with her at Getty Images, and she just always amazed me because she was just this feisty, strong, redheaded woman that would just go to all these sporting events and get like the most amazing shots. She was in a very male-dominated industry. I mean, especially in sports. She tells a story of actually having some other photographer pull her ponytail to get her out of their sight line so they could get the shot.
Wow.
So things like that, right? I mean, there's just those sort of things. Like, she was just showing up and doing her job, right? And then these are people that are coming in and making it not only almost impossible, but then it's about how do you recover from that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you're swimming in these waters where the deck is stacked against you, it's really important for us to get an idea. And, I also did a show early on with Ruby Love, and we talk about, hope and faith also needing to be a part of this, knowing that there are better things that are out there. We have the possibility of being able to change it. Like, how do we have faith in human nature that there's more good out there?
Yeah.
But we also need to take accountability for that.
Yes. Yeah. Love that. So in your experience, what gets in the way of courageous leadership, and how can leaders overcome those barriers to fulfill their purpose more boldly?
As we talked about before, I mean, I feel like so much of it is rooted in fear. So, and when you talk about, I don't think any of us wants to say like, oh, we embrace and promote the status quo.
Yeah. Right.
But we do in different
tagline.
ways, just because like we just go along, like we're the sheep. Maybe sometimes, maybe we do it a little bit too much, or maybe we're just not comfortable with questioning. Maybe we're not comfortable with speaking up in ways about, does this make sense? There's a lot of organizations where you have a lot of very talented, intelligent people, like they want to be the smartest person in the room. And that perpetuates a situation where other people in the room are just shut down, right?
Yeah.
They suck all the air out, so nobody else is really speaking up. And I think that to me is about, as a leader, having the courage to know, are you the smartest person in the room? Maybe, or do you need, let me go back on that. Do you have the need to be the smartest person in the room?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think that one especially is such a killer of engagement and innovative ideas, and they may be the smartest person in the room, a leader. They may be, and that's okay. But their job is not to show everybody that.
Right.
Their job is to actually bring out the wisdom and the creativity and the talent and the strengths of all those that are in the room, and
I think
then collectively be the smartest in the room.
Yeah. I think what I take from that often, though, or at least what I see where I work often, is that the people who are in the room aren't necessarily sitting back and waiting for it to happen. They may lack the critical thinking skills to actually take it to the next level. And so if there's that smart person at the front of the room who's doing all the talking and they don't have the skills to hold up to it, then confidence takes hold, and or lack of it, and it becomes it becomes a situation where their microculture is very much set that this person's going to do all the talking and making decisions, and we're going to follow along because we don't know how to break free. And it's different.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes the most courageous thing you can do as a leader is to be quiet and to listen and to be confident that that's okay. Your value is not in talking over everybody and being that smartest person in the room.
Yes, and being comfortable with not knowing.
Yeah.
That's huge, right?
Is,
and and I feel like it's a matter of what happens when there's such a big fear around that. It's the idea of, not knowing your stuff, right? Like not being credible, not being the relied upon leader that so many people think that you can be. Whereas at the end of the day, we know that saying "I don't know" those are some of the greatest minds in the world that say that. And the new episode or the upcoming episode of The Courage Effect that's going to be dropping this week is with Jill Angelo. And Jill Angelo talked about wanting to not be the smartest person in the room. She's like, that what makes me a better leader is what I can, how can I go in, how can I learn from other people in the room? And I think the idea of that, of being open to what might this be, as opposed to, I got to get all my ideas out there, is a game changer.
Yeah. So any practical tools, tips, or resources that you'd recommend?
Yes. So I believe, let me go back for a second too.
Yeah.
Courage is rooted in agency. And we've really been talking about this, right? So which is agency is our personal capacity to act. So it's the idea of our ability to make choices and to take actions or not take actions. That's the other thing, to your point, when you said sometimes courage is not talking.
Yeah.
Sometimes courage is also not acting. But it's the idea of we have the ability to do it independently. And so agency is ultimately rooted in choice. And I see courage as being rooted in that choice because it's how we choose to engage in every moment based on what's happening around us. So when we think about, I want to go here, I don't want to go here, how do I use what I call my three most precious resources, my time, my energy, and attention? Is this worth it?
Yeah.
Is it worth all of these things to me? What am I choosing to carry, right? Because there's certain things that it's like, sometimes we think I have to take it on for everybody. No, sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is create a boundary and support other people in being self-sufficient where you're not doing everything. But I feel like so many of these things, it comes down to how might we be giving away our power? And that is when the fear is taking us over and we're not stepping into courage. So if we, I think, start to align on that, how am I potentially giving up my power? That gives us the chance to say, how can I be more courageous in my life? Where is there an opportunity for me to maybe bring in more agency and more choice? And I really believe that a lot of that starts with pattern spotting. What are the patterns in your life? Where are the times where you tend to defer to others? Where are the times where maybe you don't step in or you just feel crappy, where you doubt yourself, where you make up an excuse or a story around why you shouldn't do something? Maybe where a past experience still has a shadow over you and you haven't been able to move beyond it to take a step in a direction that you've been wanting to. So that to me is about where in your life might you be holding yourself back, and what are the patterns that are potentially getting in that way? And I think a lot of that is the thought patterns. So I'm a big fan of reflection, and I'm a big fan of, journaling and other things where you at least start to pause and start to write down, what is really going on right now. It's sort of like what we talked about before. This is data. What do I do with it? Okay. Was this worthwhile? Was this not worthwhile? How was today? Did I show up how I wanted to show up? Is there something that I didn't do that maybe is sitting with me? What's feeling icky? It's just, and that to me is the big part of, okay, if there's an icky, then I need to do something about it.
Yeah.
So start to spend some time on what feels weird, what feels bad, and how might you then start to think about if that came up again, if that situation came up again, or if you want to recreate that situation, how might you act differently or think differently? But I do think it's the idea of starting to unpack. I mean, I've even kept a thought journal where it's like, okay, this is the soundtrack in my head. This is what the voice is telling me. And I'm like, well, is that really true? And we do this all the time as coaches, right? It's the idea of what's the soundtrack? What's your inner critic or your, imposter syndrome or all of these other things? How might those narratives be lying to you? And starting to really understand, like, that's a lie. I need to do something different about it. And I'll even have, this sounds kind of crazy, but I also do this with clients too. I name my inner critic.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And her name is Sheila. So there's times where I'm like, no, Sheila. Like, go over there, go away. And I like that because I know that sounds a little bit odd and maybe a little bit crazy, but it brings levity to it, right? And it's just sort of, it allows me to personify it and know, like, well, maybe that is me, but maybe it's not me. And maybe I can be a little bit funny and not beat myself up about something else, because we're way too good at doing that. And any opportunity we have to see a pattern and to say, do I want to change it or do I not? That's where the choice comes in.
Yeah.
And then it's about, what could it look like? And thinking about that. And this is where I love also, if you have a trusted partner, like somebody in your life, a good friend, an accountability partner, even a coach, but somebody that's not afraid to tell you some truth.
Mm-hmm. Right. Be honest.
Yeah. Because you need that. It's almost like the personal board of directors, right? The kitchen cabinet. Like, who are the people that are going to tell you, like, yeah, well, sometimes you do this, and I don't know if that's the best solution, like this is how it comes off for me. Or, we do this all the time as coaches, but I think independently we can figure out who are the people in our lives that we want to challenge us. How do we invite that in and start maybe then getting a better idea, and not getting people, and also knowing these are the people in my life that are probably breeding more negativity. Do I want to continue relationships with them? Do I want to put some boundaries around that relationship? But I think it starts with almost figuring out what's what's on the table, because you need to set the table for what's next for you and what courage potentially could look like. And start small, right? Like, as you're going through some of these steps, don't just like make this bold action. Unless you have to, if you're in a scenario or a situation where that demands it. But it sort of goes back to polyvagal theory, right? It's the idea of, like, you need to push out that titration, push out a little bit to get more comfortable, and build the courage muscle, as I like to call it. So then next time, as we said before, it doesn't look so scary, and you just start to get more comfortable with it, and then you're going to be doing things that you didn't even know. And you can say, this is an experiment. Let me see. Did it work? Did it not work? Was it a nightmare? Do I want to do this again? Maybe not.
Yeah.
But I do think it's how do we get that perspective on ourselves? How do we try to, like, pluck ourselves out to see ourselves differently? And then we make the choice of how we want to act, not act, think, or maybe just, to be different.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
How do you see the connection between courage and creating a more just, compassionate, and thriving world?
They are pretty much, bound at the core, like in the root, I would say. As we talked about a little bit before, speaking truth to power. How do we use our voices? How do we, and now more than ever, now, so many of our values are attacked in our broader world right now. And we then have the option to decide, how do I want to use my agency here? And I made a very definitive decision to put myself on a news diet last year. And this year it kept shrinking, and I was almost, and I needed that. I needed to, like, put some boundaries around how much I was taking, because I was just overwhelmed by so much. But it gets to the point of then it gets so tight. I wasn't watching enough news. I wasn't as informed as I wanted to be. And that to me is about, how do we decide what we expose ourselves to? What do we not expose ourselves to? But how do I do that in a way that also challenges my thinking? I need to listen to news sources and other things that aren't aligned with how I think, so I can hopefully get that broader perspective. I ultimately have hope. I do have hope that we are going to be better on the other side of all of this. It's going to be incredibly painful to get through it. It already is. Yes. The costs are massive and terrifying. And my heart breaks very regularly right now when I see about so many things that are happening. We have to, in some way, come out better for this. I don't know exactly how that's going to look, but I have to be a part of that.
I think the follow-up to this is really perfect for this particular moment, and that is, what role do leaders play in bridging this connection?
Massively. And that's the thing, is that I also want to say, like, my definition of leadership is not a title or a role. It's all of us. It's a set of behaviors and thinking and how we show up in the world. One of my favorite quotes about leadership is Peter Drucker. You know, our first role as leaders is to orchestrate our own energy, so then we can orchestrate the energy of those around us. That is why it matters so much to be courageous, to challenge your own thinking, to not be the smartest person or not think you're the smartest person in the room, and to disrupt yourself and to encourage other people to do the same thing. Because it is not just one and done, and it can't be. I mean, leadership is not command and control.
No.
Influence, yes. There's all these things where how can you come in and maybe talk to people, influence some ways of thinking, but also understanding, also having compassion and learning and knowing that we are better for each other.
And the ability to inspire. I think that's like something that always makes me gravitate toward a leader that has the ability to inspire me to want to do something differently or to take that next step out, you know?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also, I think, you know, a lot of Brene Brown's research around leadership, you know, one of the biggest fears is being redundant or being irrelevant. Like people, like leaders just, then that's a huge fear. And that's, I think, a human fear too, right? It's like we want to have value. We want to know that other people value us in various ways. So how do we potentially then take some inventory with ourselves around that? How am I not just giving value to other people, but value to myself? How can I want to live with myself every day?
Right.
How can I be in that space of better understanding me? I mean, one of the most beautiful quotes that I've heard, and I don't know who this is from, I think it might be the Buddha actually, which is, you know, your most important relationship is with yourself. And so we have to start with some of that self-love. We have to start with that place of better understanding who we are, who we might be, and what do we need to reconcile. And this takes forever, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in therapy. Thank God for therapy.
Yeah.
But it's just, you know, I mean, one of like some of the work that I've been doing recently is around storytelling. And one of the stories that I tell it on the Courage Effect early on. It was one of the things that motivated me to do the show was I was in a really bad car accident when I was 18. I was thrown from a Jeep. And I was so lucky to have lived. I was lucky to have my legs, but I have a very large scar on my left calf. And I've been doing more storytelling around this because I hated that scar. It was something that I was always hiding. I didn't like, you know, I mean, it was just, it was a flaw. And I saw it as a flaw. And I have come to learn over time, it's not a flaw. It is this beautiful sign of power of what I have come through.
Yeah.
And a lot of my storytelling is around like my scar talking to me and saying like, what are you doing? Like, I'm a part of you. Why do you hate me?
Yeah.
Let all that, let all that other stuff go. Like, let your anger at the woman that hit you go. Let your hate for me go, because it doesn't make me less. It makes me more.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
You know, it really is. That is just beautiful, actually. I know, and myself included, people who have actually put ourselves in a place where we see ourselves as less because we have a scar or because we have some characteristic that others don't have. And it's not necessarily one that's desired, right? So that's beautifully said. Thank you for saying that. And I think that, you know, that alone, I think sometimes will get people thinking about, wow, you know, it is a part of me. It is going to be here forever. It's not something I can just take off. So that's beautiful. Move through it.
Thank you. I would also go, I'm going to bring this back full circle to your question, Tricia, which is leadership. We are marked by our experiences at work. I don't want to be a leader that marks other people, like that scars them. I work with a lot of leaders who get to a point where they've had a crisis in confidence. Something has happened. They've gotten really bad feedback. A project failed. Like something went wrong, and they are struggling to recover from it. And that, I think, is the other thread here, is that we are all marked by our experiences, and we are marked by them at work. How do we learn from it? And how do we potentially move on and not mark others in the process?
I love that. And I love all your conversation about the self-reflection and work that we have to do on ourselves. And it reminds me of the Brené Brown quote about who we are is how we lead. Mm-hmm. And when you were just talking about that, we don't want to mark other people. If we haven't done the work, we're going to. If we haven't done that internal work, because we pass it on, those scars, we pass on those scars and those marks, as you were calling them, sometimes unknowingly, because we haven't done the work. We aren't even self-aware enough to know that this is what we're actually doing. And that's the saddest part of all, I think.
Well, and you mentioned that, if you don't take care of it, if you don't address it, you're going to eventually address it. But when you're on that end of it, it's now almost like a triage. You almost have to go back and say, it's bigger than it was. It's harder for me to actually fix if I'd caught it, earlier on. If I'd done my self-work earlier, I wouldn't have gone through all of these other situations that made it even more egregious.
Yeah, I do think that is one of the things that is pretty profound about working with early stage leaders, is the opportunity to actually build those good habits up front, rather than having them sitting on our Zoom call or in their office or whatever, a late stage leader getting 360 feedback for the first time. And they're like, I don't understand. I thought I was awesome. And it's like, you are awesome, but we've got some things that we need to work on, that just because you didn't know, usually it's because you just didn't know. You weren't aware of it. Yeah.
Well, and I want to say one other thing about that too, is that we don't do these things intentionally. I mean, it's, I think back to, I was a sales leader for many years. And I think back to, there were times where my boss was coming down on me because we weren't hitting goals. Yeah. And, I think about like around 2008 when the market was a total disaster. And it was like, okay, not only are we not hitting our sales goals, but we're losing some of the committed contracts that we've had in the past, right? So it was about not just about growing revenue, but potentially like losing existing revenue. And there were times where I would, I'd have conversations with some of my team members, and I would take my stress to them. Like I would start stressing them out, like, well, why aren't you doing better? Right. And that was the thing. I was not doing that on purpose. My goal was to try to help my salespeople, but I was doing just the opposite. Yeah. Because I was just bringing stress and not necessarily helping them to solution for it. Yeah. And that's the other side of it, I think, is how do we think we're helping, but we're actually exacerbating something or making it worse?
Yeah. That's a good question.
Yeah. It's so true. My next question was really about, you learned a lot through your podcast and your guests talking about courage, but I know you learned a lot, and you just shared a little bit there about leadership and what courage looks like in leadership through your years of experience of being a leader. And as you were saying, everybody is a leader. But here I'm talking specifically, about formal roles, but it can even be, you've had leadership opportunities that are outside of the work world as well.
Sometimes you have the opportunity to even be more of an impactful leader when you don't have direct reports, because I think you can, sometimes when you lead not based on hierarchical lines, it can be even more powerful. Mm-hmm. I've learned so much from people in organizations that weren't my boss. I'm sure that you two have too.
Oh, yeah.
So there's that piece of it. But I mean, for me, so much of it was about, I did experiment quite a bit with various roles. I mean, it was like, well, okay, let's see what that could be. Let's figure it out, and not letting what I thought it would be, or what it might be in a bad way, get in the way of me saying yes to something. So if a role was offered to me, or there was a role that, like, if I found out that my job was being redundant or something was happening, okay, how can I find something else to not just like grab onto it, but to think about what are some skills maybe that I can bring to other opportunities. How can I ask for what I need? How can I advocate for myself? those were really key things. And I was always encouraging my people to do that too. I mean, I had somebody that she at one point, she wanted to move to Los Angeles. It's when I was living in New York. And she quit her job. She was like, oh, I got a job and they're going to move me to LA. And I said, oh, I didn't know you wanted to move to LA. Is that something that you would, she's like, oh, I would love to stay here if I could move to LA. I'm like, well, let's talk about it. And we did. And she stayed. But it was just, and I said, I wish you would have talked to me about it. She's like, I'm just scared to talk about it. So it's like, even though we think we're these approachable leaders, it's scary. Like, these are scary things to be able to say something along those lines. So I think it's how do you build that trust over time with people, but also making sure that you are consistently checking in with yourself. And again, like, I do think that it has to do with it as well. How might that have turned out if I did this differently?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what changed for me, I mean, getting a coach was a game changer for me. They gave us all, when I worked at Getty Images, they gave all the sales leaders coaches. And that's when I was like, this is a whole other way that I can cultivate my team. I can cultivate myself.
Yeah.
But the idea of just because you've done things one way and seen success, is that going to be sustainable for what's going to come next? Because something's always going to change. So adaptability is huge. And that, to me, also, it takes a massive dose of courage, because you got to be ready for what's next.
Yeah. Get outside the comfort, right? Yeah. What works, but is it going to continue to? Yeah, I love that.
So if you could give one call to action for leaders who are listening here today, who want to maybe lead with more courage and with more possibilities, what would you do? What would that be?
I would say start with what feels icky.
That's good.
I think we all have something icky, right? There's something where we're like, that doesn't feel good right now, or maybe it's not me, maybe it's somebody else, but something doesn't feel good. What doesn't feel good, and how can you spend a little bit of time investigating that? So, and where might you then be able to say, how can I have the courage to speak to what's not working for me, or maybe for somebody else? Or even, I would say, as a leader, asking your team, what do you need from me most right now?
Very cool.
And that's one of the things that I think is vital. We think we know what our teams need. We don't always know. We have ideas, but how impactful it is, and how powerful to have your boss ask you that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to get an answer that maybe you don't know. So I think it goes back to, what don't you know? And how can you get more courage out of that? But it's okay not to know. And what are the things that may be in your life where it's like, okay, what might I be more comfortable in not knowing? And I know that sounds kind of overblown and weird, but again, I feel like there is that internal ickiness that we all just kind of have, that's telling you something.
Yeah.
What might it be telling you, and what might your possibilities be around that, around action, around thinking? That's where change happens, and that's where courage comes in.
So our focus this year, so we're going to shift gears just a little bit here, is on thriving, and we call it Leaders Thrive in 25. What are you doing? What practices do you have to personally thrive this year? We know it's an especially challenging year.
A lot of the practices that I've been putting into place over the past few years are serving me very well now. And I say that because the same day that I launched my podcast, that I launched The Courage Effect, a dear friend of mine died.
Oh,
and
I'm so sorry.
That was, I knew he was sick. I didn't necessarily know that he was that sick. But through that, and then a number of other experiences of, friends who were battling cancer, so many repeated things in life, the political situations, other people that were impacted by greater things going on, I knew that I needed help. I knew that I needed to be able to manage grief in a different way, and be able to manage loss and support and caregiving without it taking me over. Because I am by nature a caregiver and a fixer and a helper. So I have to be very mindful that I don't over-index on those things. So for me, thriving is about being there for other people in a way that is best for them and is best for me.
So
deciding what I carry.
this is our last question, and we do ask it of all of our guests, and we're going to ask you as well. And that is, looking forward, what are you really excited about? It could be anything you want to talk about.
I am really excited so I am increasing my public speaking, and
Nice.
I am doing I'm doing a course right now, and I'm doing a larger project. I'm to create what I call a transformational speech, a transformational keynote speech. So my goal is to really get more of that sort of, get the word out about courage to really create that more courageous world. And I am really excited that I'm learning new techniques to be able to do that, working with a speechwriter to help me to edit and to get it into a place where I want it to be, working on my stagecraft, just, learning again.
Yeah.
And not just assuming that like, oh, I've been doing this is all working. It's working to an extent, but I'm always in like a great zone when I'm learning and doing that with other people. And you're both included in that as far as like my larger learning communities. But it's so much fun and scary to go out there and to try different things and see what happens. And it's been super fun, and it's transformational, because for me, it's been really interesting to see like different creative juices flowing and what's possible. And not only just surprising other people, but surprising myself in the process.
Yeah,
That is exciting. That's
Yeah.
so exciting. And I'm wishing you all sorts of success in that. I think you'll be wonderful. And wow, it's also keeping you forever young. You know that, don't you?
Of course.
Stay in learning mode forever. You'll never get old, right? That's
right.
wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. And you said that you just have, and congratulations on that. I think that is an
Yes.
exciting new path. Not necessarily a totally new path, but it's more of a really fabulous path. So, and you have a new season dropping on The Courage Effect.
Yep, June 11th, new season.
Yes.
And it's been really fun to do, as you both know, just to get new guests on the show and to get the conversations out in the universe. And yeah, it's great fun. So, and it's summer, so it's almost officially summer. So I'm also happy that we have longer days, and I'm really excited to get out there and to hopefully, continue to spread the joy and the hope and the courage.
Yeah. So if people want to find you, how do they find you? If they want to listen to the podcast, if they just want to check out how you're doing. And I know you've got also a great, I don't know if you would technically call it a newsletter, how you would describe it, but you do put communication out, which I think is really also wonderful. It gets people thinking about leadership and reflecting.
I do. Thank you for that. The best way to find me is at wellercollaboration.com. That's my website. You can also find me on LinkedIn. The Courage Effect is also linked from Weller Collaboration. It's on all platforms for podcasts. And yes, I do have a Substack newsletter and area called Reimagine Growth. And that's, I'm posting articles there around growth, change, transformation, courage, all of these things. And that usually happens every 2 to 3 weeks. So yes. And I'm pretty active in all of those things. So if you want to sign up for my newsletter, go for it. You can do that via wellercollaboration.com. And I would love to hear from you too on the Courage Effect or on other things. I want to know how it might be potentially impacting you. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks to both of you too, Crystal and Trisha, for inviting me to be here, but to hopefully, encourage, to stoke the fires of courage and to have more of a conversation around it, because I only know what lands when I hear from people. I mean, I know what lands for me, but if I really want to spread that courageous contagion, hearing from other people is a really valuable part of that.
It is. It's critical, especially if you're in this particular industry or doing, things that people can have a choice to drop in on or not, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. We'll make sure that we post your access addresses on our show notes this week.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you again, Suzanne, for coming and spending time with us and sharing your wisdom, and best of luck in all that going forward.
Thank you. Such a joy. I appreciate you both.
Bye.
Okay, bye. Well, that was really interesting. It was lovely to have some time with Suzanne and talk about, what really was the foundation for her podcast, The Courage Effect, and, all of the things that go with that. It's not just a podcast about courage. There's so much more to it. It was interesting, very interesting.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
And we had really interesting conversation with her right after the recording about some of the cool guests she's got coming up.
Yes.
On that launching, what'd she say? I think June
11th.
Yeah, next week.
Yeah.
This week, I guess it would be. So yeah, I'm excited to keep listening.
Yes, and we hope you'll go and listen to Suzanne on her podcast, which will launch on Wednesday. So very cool. So let's keep that conversation going. If you have questions or comments about the show, you can find us on all our social media channels at lifting_leaders. We have so many exceptional podcast episodes coming up with more fantastic guests like Suzanne. So be sure to subscribe to our podcast at Apple Podcast or wherever you listen. If you know someone who would find this episode inspiring, share it with them. Text them, email them, and take a screenshot and share it on your Instagram and tag us at lifting_leaders. If you'd like to know more about us, our guests, or the show, please go to our website at liftingleaderspodcast.com. You'll find our show notes there as well. If you're looking for help in developing your leaders or would like a growth opportunity yourself through leader coaching, please contact us through our website at www.liftingleaderspodcast.com. Thank you to Ari Chance Roberts for his technical support of our show. Finally, please take 30 seconds and follow us. It helps you because you never miss an episode, and it helps us because you never miss an episode. So to follow us, go to Lifting Leaders Podcast Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Then just tap the plus sign in the upper right-hand corner or click on follow. While you're there, if you'd be willing to give us a 5-star rating and a review and share the episode with a friend, we'd be so grateful. Thank you, Crystal, for bringing Suzanne to us today. That was wonderful.
It was really fun. I was glad she joined us.
Yeah. Find ways every day to lift each other up. Have a wonderful week.
Bye.